In my Bible reading this morning, I came across a passage that impressed me, and obviously it has often in the past. I'm reading this year, as I've mentioned before, in Ronald Knox's translation of the Old Testament. That's my reading for the year. But after I'd read this passage and decided that I wanted to talk with you about it, I didn't bring that Bible with me to my office here. Instead, I pulled from my shelf a Bible that was given to me more than 60 years ago. I hate to mention that because it'll make you think that I'm older than I am, but that's when it was given to me, over 60 years ago. And I discovered when I opened to this same passage that I had underlined it then, way back then. It impressed me at that time, and it impresses me still today. It's a portion that comes to us from tragic days in the history of Israel, when King Saul and his son Jonathan were both killed in battle and tragically then abused after their death. And then the whole army of Israel went out in defeat. That ushered in the days of David as king, first of Judah and then of the whole nation of Israel. When a messenger came to David with the tragic news of Israel's defeat and of Saul and Jonathan's death, David gave what you might call a poem. It was in any event, eventually, a song for the people of Israel. And in that song, he had this fascinating line. You'll find it in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 20. I happen to be reading now from the King James Version because that's the one that I had 60 years or so ago. David says just this: "Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Askelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised triumph." He was talking about the bad news that had come to him, the news not only of Israel's defeat, but of the death of Saul and Jonathan and of the humiliation of Saul's body. This was the kind of thing, David said, that should not get to the streets of Gath or Askelon. He didn't want the enemy to have something about which they could take some sort of ungodly, unworthy rejoicing. I ponder that. I pondered it 60 years ago. I ponder it still today, to remind us as Christians not to add fuel to the flames of ugliness in our world. We should be a people who try as much as possible to build faith, to build hope, to build gladness in life. We face the hard facts, but we don't glory in misery, in ugliness, in defeat. David knew that if that word became commonly known in the streets of the enemy, that it would make the cause of God and the cause of Israel, God's nation, to be brought to shame. I sometimes have the feeling, as I hear Christian people talking about some of the ills that befall individuals, institutions, churches, that they become more of an aid to the enemy than they could ever realize. And they end up publishing, so to speak, in the streets of the enemy, the sad news, when it's our big business to be producing the good news. There's plenty of trouble in our world. There's plenty of trouble in the church and its institutions. There are plenty of failures with God's people. We do our best, please, under God, to exalt that which is good. We don't ignore the evil. We don't deny the evil. But neither, please, under God, should we give more attention to the evil. Our business is to exalt the cause of Christ, the goodness that God is doing in the world, and our expectations for God's continuing goodness and victory in the world. David's word was a right one. Don't publish this in the streets of the enemy. Instead, move forward in the cause and the righteousness of our Lord Christ. And that's my word for today. God bless us, everyone.